Yo Bar, what's up and what's happening, and welcome back to It's the Yo Bar series with me, Chris Harding. So in today's video, I'd like to discuss my failings as a nutrition coach and also as a type 2 diabetic nutrition coach. I wanted to give you a brief outlook on how I used to think and how I think now, and also the reasons as to why I've changed my mind when it comes to nutrition. So to zoom out for a second, the reason why I wanted to open up this conversation is I feel that it's a conversation that needs to be had, not only for my subscribers, but also for me and also new people. It's so hard not to ramble. It's so difficult not to ramble. So let's zoom out for a second. The reason why I wanted to create this video is because I was looking at some old content that I created on this channel, and I made a video that basically was stating that I was blaming individuals for the reason as to why they've got type 2 diabetes or the reason that they are obese. But actually, I've completely changed my mindset around that, and I'll tell you the reason why. But first, what I want to do is I want to scope out back to that video for a second. So the reason why I created this channel was to be able to give people advice. And what I realized I was doing is I was misinforming them with the wrong information because I was misinformed myself. What do I mean by that? Well, I studied as a nutritionist and I became a nutrition coach. And originally, before I got into working with type 2 diabetics, I was actually working with just people who were generally trying to lose weight. And I was finding it very difficult to get them to drop weight. They drop weight initially, but in the long term, it was very difficult to get them to actually lose substantial amounts of weight. And so my mindset was, well, it's because you're choosing to eat the wrong food. It's because you're not exercising enough. It's because you choose this. And actually what you need to do is you need to have that right mindset to be able to attain the goal that you actually want to be able to achieve. And to a degree, that statement is true. You do need to have the right mindset when it comes to trying to achieve something, such as looking at controlling your type 2 diabetes, looking at your cardiovascular health, looking at your health in general, dealing with weight management. They're all things where you need to have the right mindset, yes. But to put blame onto yourself, and for me as a coach to put blame onto my clients, wasn't the right answer. And the reason was because I hadn't worked with enough people yet to understand what the real problem was. Yes, I had coaching. Yes, I had a qualification, but actually in the actual pursuit of trying to find answers for people, I was looking down the wrong road, or the wrong avenue, if you like. So my mindset at the time was to basically structure people's diets, get them to eat the food that they should be eating and not the food that they wanted to eat, which is completely wrong because you're never going to win. That's always going to be an uphill battle. And the other thing is as well is that I was blaming them for choosing the wrong foods to consume. And the reason why I know that that's incorrect is because as of the last few years, what I've realized with working with more and more clients is it's much more to do with the mental than it is to do with anything else. And I'll give you an example of that. So one client came to me and they had type 2 diabetes, but actually above that, for them at that immediate time, they were depressed. They had quite severe depression and it was affecting everything in their life. And then the fact that they were then diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at a relatively young age, under the age of 50, it actually worsened the depression. And so for me, I thought, well, I'm a nutrition coach. I'm not really there to be able to deal with their depression. That's not really for me to do. But after time, a lot of the reason why they were depressed is not only about how they felt about themselves, about their overall weight, about their type 2 diabetes, and about their health in general. But actually, one of the biggest things that they were lacking in was confidence. And that confidence came from the fact that they were eating the wrong types of food. But what was wrong of me to do was to accuse that person or make a statement to that person that you make that choice, when actually, in actual fact, what's really going on is that food's being marketed to you. So when you look at consuming a food or you look at consuming a product, what you've got to think of is is that the food that you buy out of a package isn't actually a food, or at least it's not sold to you in that way. It's sold to you by a food manufacturer because they are looking to make a sale. They're selling their product to you. That product just happens to be food that is normally convenience food because it's easier to do that rather than to prepare something from scratch. The other thing that's bad about this food that's marketed to you, or let's call it a product that's marketed to you, the other thing that's wrong with it is that it is highly refined, and it is also highly palatable, and it's highly moreish, which what I mean by that is that you want more of it. And also the fourth thing is it's also highly condensed in calories. So in a very small item or product or food that you choose to consume, you've got a very dense amount of calories and you've got a very dense amount of energy. And because it's refined, because it's highly palatable, because it's got a lot of calories in, that's actually doing a few different things. The first thing is it's affecting your metabolic health. It's also giving you a issue with your weight. So you're finding that weight is more of a problem, or the clients that I was working with, they were finding that weight was becoming more and more of a problem. The other thing is as well, is it's affecting this. It's not just making you feel depressed, but it's also hijacking the ancient hormones that you have been, given to be able to govern the differences between reward and striving for something. So if you go to the hippocampus, which is inside the brain, the hippocampus is responsible for a lot of things, but two hormones that affect the hippocampus are dopamine and serotonin. When you look at serotonin as a hormone and you look at the effect that serotonin has on the hippocampus, it is there for mood regulation and it's also there for memory consolidation. So those two hormones, what I call the ancient hormones, and the reason I call them ancient hormones is because they've been with us since the dawn of time, since the dawn of humanity. Long before pre-agriculture even began, we've always had these hormones. Well, the types of food that we're eating now in the 21st century are very much hijacking those hormones. What I mean by that is that they're so addictive. They've got additives, emulsifiers, preservatives, sweeteners, and they all go to making the food, as I've said before, highly palatable with huge amounts of calories in, highly addictive, so it hijacks that feeling of reward, which is what dopamine is there for. And you go back for more because it doesn't actually satisfy you. The other effect that I found when working with clients and where I was wrong is that not considering the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome, and it's quite obvious to see, has got a huge role in how it affects our mood and how it also affects our internal well-being and also our external well-being. Our internal well-being is gut health. So if you choose to consume better forms of food, if you choose to consume more whole food, what you're going to realize is that you feel better within yourself and you also perform better, and you're actually going to start to lower your weight. You're actually going to be able to regulate your blood sugar levels better, which is going to help you control your type 2 diabetes if you have diabetes, for example. Also, it's going to help metabolic diseases or diseases of the metabolism, such as cancer. For example, once you are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, statistically what happens is you become 25% more likely for a cancer cell to begin to mutate. And so the diseases of the metabolism, such as cardiovascular disease, such as type 2 diabetes, such as cancer, can all be diverted, or you can divert away from them if you choose to or learn to start to consume better nutrition. However, let's go back to the highly processed food. So it has an effect on your gut microbiome, but more than that, it actually is going to have an effect on your mental well-being because it's not feeding you properly. The poor quality of food that we're now consuming from these manufacturers, from these products that are being marketed and sold to us, are so detrimental to our internal health, it's actually making us feel worse. And so where my client originally came to me with depression, and he felt that, he couldn't really make head nor tail of why he felt depressed. But then actually when we started to look into his food, what started to happen was his mood started to change. He started to lose weight, which obviously has got a really positive impact on an individual. When they start to lose weight and they see the results of all their hard work and their hard labor when it comes to trying to reverse these problems of the metabolism and of the gut microbiome, the person starts to feel better. They start to feel uplifted. And again, if I go back to when I was working with clients initially, I was just teaching them very textbook ABC nutrition. I wasn't really taking into any consideration the emotions of my clients. I wasn't taking into consideration the types of food that they were choosing to eat, because I knew that they were bad, and I was blaming them for eating them or choosing to consume them. But actually, the reality is that because this processed food does hijack your brain in a way, it hijacks how you feel about yourself. It hijacks how your hormones respond and react to the types of food that you're eating. They create an addiction. And then all of a sudden, the food that should be nourishing us actually becomes addictive. And that's obviously becomes a massive problem because we can't control that addiction. So let's zoom back in. How I choose to create my YouTube videos and also how I choose to work with clients are two of the same thing. When I create a video, I'm basically giving you information that I have learned by working with clients with type 2 diabetics. My mindset was to be able to hold them accountable, but kind of almost a bit like a teacher, tell them off for doing wrong when it wasn't actually their fault for doing wrong. What I realize now when I work with clients is I have to address the main issue, and the main issue is the types of food that they're eating. And also around that are the habits that they create when they choose to eat that food. I'll give you an example. For me personally, I only eat twice a day, so I do quite a lot of intermittent fasting, and it's quite easy for me. I have 2 very large meals a day, which are based around fibrous food, high amounts of protein and high amounts of fat, and it allows me to regulate my weight. So my weight has stayed the same for many years now, because I choose to eat that way. Now, that is quite a strict diet, and I know that not everyone could adhere to that, and that's absolutely fine. But what I am suggesting for people to do, if they want to start to make a change for the better, is first of all, if you are blaming yourself, if you do feel low or you feel depressed about your situation when it comes to your health, your well-being, and especially your mental well-being, you need to consider the fact it's not entirely your fault. The way that the products of these foods are being marketed to you, and they're being pushed at you, and they're being sort of almost forced down your throat, if you don't mind that expression, I think that you're not the sole culprit of this problem. The culprit of this problem is food manufacturers and the way that they market it to you, and the fact that your food, I feel, is poisoned. And because that food is poisoned, it's making you feel depressed, it's making you feel unmotivated, and you've got lack of drive. If you feel that way, what I would suggest, and what I suggest to my clients now, and how I design their programs for them for type 2 diabetics, is that you need to just start with the very basics. Don't make it too complicated. In fact, continue with what you're doing, but start to just implement a few different things. So for example, let's say your evening meal, you don't have that much vegetation, and you might say, well, I don't really like vegetables. Well, that's fine, but there must be something that you can probably say, well, I don't mind having this vegetable here because it's not too bad, it's palatable, and I don't mind having it. Start to introduce that. And then you can kind of say, well, all right, then once a week, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to eat 3 or 4 or 5 times. I'm actually going to try and consume 2 much larger meals. And those larger meals need to be more condensed in terms of their time. So the time in which you eat them is between the last meal and the first meal is more further apart. I'll give you an example of that. Your last meal will be at 7 p.m. in the evening, and your first meal the next day will be 1 p.m. in the afternoon. That's a huge amount of time where the body's not only digested that food, but it started to burn up other energy because it still needs to be able to perform. It still needs to be able to function. It still needs to be able to get you up in the morning and go to work. So how I was working with clients previously and how I was creating my YouTube videos was wrong. And so I'm sorry for that. And I was misguided myself. But it's only through doing copious amounts of research, copious amounts of reading, and also working with clients for years that you learn that you actually get a much better understanding of where they are, rather than them coming to me and saying, I need help. They come to me because they really want help and they want guidance, but they also initially want someone to understand their problem and understand where they're coming from so that I can help guide them better. And because I can guide my clients in the right direction, it has a positive impact for me too personally, because it allows me to achieve more goals for them. It allows me to help them achieve their goals. And it also gives me a lot more information. It gives me a lot more understanding about empathy and sympathy when it comes to someone who's struggling to try and cope and deal with their health because they don't know how to do it themselves. And that's the information that I would give back to you. Start small and start with very insignificant things when it comes to your diet. Start with small changes and then grow upon time. If you're trying to make these huge changes, let's say, for example, that you choose to go on a diet tomorrow, that isn't going to be the thing that's actually going to help you to lose weight. It might help you lose weight initially. It might help you drop those first few kilos and you feel great. That's fantastic. But it will start to slow down because you're not making lifestyle changes. And when you make lifestyle changes with food, they'll start to evolve your habits for the better. They'll start to change things for you. You'll start to, sleep better, feel better, be more active, want to be more active because you have the energy to, and not feeling low and not feeling depressed, which I really do feel these foods play a huge role in. So guys, I hope you found that video insightful, and also I hope you found that video helpful. If you want to drop a comment in the comment section below, please do so. I'll also drop my email in there and also links to my website. And if you are a type 2 diabetic, you can take my type 2 diabetes quiz and give you a free PDF as a result of where you stand with your type 2 diabetes and what the things that you can do to try to improve it. Be fit, be healthy, and of course, be a boss.